Even theetje inschenken nog.
Hi everybody. Can everybody hear me? So welcome everyone. My name is Lily. I work at Lendahand. Within Lendahand, I work at the marketing department, and it's my pleasure to host today and to moderate today's webinar. So I think we'll wait maybe for a few minutes so that people can still join. I see now we have around 7-8 people now. So if you have any questions during the webinar, just please ask them in the question box, or just ask them in the chat box. Yeah, we'll wait for 1-2 minutes. Emil already asked who knows a good joke. I'm terrible at jokes, by the way, so.
Thomas Peter probably knows when.
What do you call a boomerang that doesn't come back?
A stick. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Nice. Thanks, David.
Okay, that's a good opening, I think. So yeah, it's 2 minutes past 4, so I think we can begin. Like I said, we've been Lendahand has been crowdfunding ourselves on Seedrs this past few weeks, and in order to give people an opportunity to get to know Lendahand, we've been organizing these webinars. Today's topic will be how Lendahand has been founded, and who better to talk about that than our founder himself. Peter Heijen is here today. And also to give people more insight about how we work with our partners, we also have our investment manager, Thomas. Before I give the word to Peter, Thomas, can you also give a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah. So I started at Lendahand about 1.5 years ago, after having worked for the Red Cross. And then within Lendahand, I'm part of the investments team, and then especially in charge of portfolio management. So I have quite a bit of back and forward every single day with our partners. And because we want to give a little bit more insights today also in what that means and in what our partners normally do and sort of behind the scene facts. That's why I joined the call.
Yeah. So I think it's we've been talking about our ways for a couple of weeks, and we've seen a lot of interesting statistics and numbers. But in the end, I think it's also important to show that we deal with real partners and real people in the emerging countries, and that every euro that is spent to our platform really goes to a certain partner or project. And that's, I think, a nice way to also to introduce you, Peter. So you started Lendahand. So what did you do before Lendahand, and how did you come up with Lendahand?
Yes, thank you, Lily. And hello all, my name is indeed Peter Heijen. I just want to say in advance that I'm home alone with 3 kids and a babysitter. My wife's at work. These are Corona times, and it might be the case that I get interrupted. So apologies for that before. But let's hope it all goes well. So thanks for the question, Lily. So before Lendahand, I studied econometrics and basically did some investment management at a large Dutch pension fund called MN Services. I was an equity manager, so I ran a portfolio of buying and selling equities. And after that, I became equity analyst at a Dutch private bank. So for a couple of years, I covered the oil sector, so stocks in the oil sector, creating sell reports and buy reports. for Dutch oil stocks. That's what I did.
So that's a huge difference with what you're doing today.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, a good point. So, a long time before I studied econometrics, I was born as an idealistic boy and sort of ended up in the banking sector. But I realized I wasn't at the right sector, to be honest. And I went backpacking, and it was sort of a journey, a personal journey. And I went backpacking in Bangladesh. And what I noticed on the streets there was the enormous amount of poverty, and it really sort of upset me. It made me kind of mad to see all these kids of 3, 5, 7 years old living on the streets with no parents, with no opportunities in their lives, with no food, with no friends, with no clothes even. It's really horrible actually to walk on the streets of Bangladesh and see that happening under your nose, and while you're living in this wealthy Dutch country that worries about the next PlayStation. I really came back from that trip what is a good solution for poverty? So there's a lot of ways you can deal with poverty, and there's a lot of NGOs, and there's a lot of intergovernmental support. But after some thinking, I actually came up with the idea of Lendahand, and that is to finance businesses and to let entrepreneurs at work, right? Creating jobs. And I think entrepreneurs are creative, they're passionate, and they're dedicated to create economical growth. And this is actually what's really needed in many of these emerging countries. They need a lot more jobs so parents can just keep their kids at home or bring them to school or whatever, take care of them. So this is how Lendahand got started. I came back from that trip in Bangladesh, and I really wanted to think of a solution for that.
So that's really how do you say that? Dapper, strong, change, and really good that you thought about that. So you touched really. You said in your answer that you really felt for the poverty in these countries. So why do you think poverty is so important to tackle? Because it's also in our mission, of course. Lendahand, as a company, we have as our mission to fight poverty.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of, I guess, problems to tackle in the world, right? There's the climate, and there's the ways we feed animals, and there's, shortages of water and food and everything. And for me, being there in Bangladesh, but also in other countries, I really believe that in the power of humanity and in the capabilities. And if you cut that short, it's just such an opportunity loss, right? And I think that every human being sort of deserves a shot to develop themselves and to live in a sort of have a dignified life. And that's not the case as we speak. The situation actually in Bangladesh is still the same. There's millions of kids living there on the streets, but it's slowly, poverty is getting lower. And I really think, and I really believe that it's also the role of us humans to make sure that us humans have a good life here on the planet. And I think when you live below the poverty line, a more income just increases your happiness, right? And I think I believe that we should tackle that problem because I think when we solve the problem, and when all these smart, intelligent, creative kids in all these countries in Africa, when they go to school, when they get to educate themselves, I believe that will solve other world problems as well. Because when you live in poverty, I can really imagine that you care less about other problems in the world, right? So that's why my personal sort of problem in the world to solve became poverty.
Yeah, and how? So you thought with helping these entrepreneurs is a way to fight poverty. So how does impact investing? Why is that important then as a tool to fight poverty?
Yeah. So what I believe is that there's a lot of capital in the world, right? And a lot of that capital is actually sitting in banks or in the equity markets or in the global bond markets. It's sitting at governments. and not so much at the entrepreneur. So if you look at a term called the missing middle, that's entrepreneurs active in the SME sector. There's a massive lack of funding for these type of entrepreneurs, and these can be entrepreneurs that source clean water, or solve the climate, or create jobs, or all kinds of good stuff that entrepreneurs can do. Is not happening at the moment because the money is not in their hands. And I believe when it's their hands, they can create a social impact, and then can create an investment return for the investors, and that's called impact investing. So I believe that when we scale up and when impact investing gets mainstream in the world, we can solve the sustainable development goals, and also the United Nations has done some calculations on that, and they even calculate that there's a certain number of impact investments, a certain amount of billions actually, that is needed to solve the SDGs. So they created a report saying if this amount is impact invested, then we've solved the SDGs. So there's really a link between world problems and impact investing, according to me, but I guess also according to the United Nations in that report.
Yeah, to elaborate, I think, so SDGs, for people who don't know, these are the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, like sort of resolutions where by 2030 we have 70 or 18 goals that the world needs to improve on. So, and the first goal, of course, is no poverty, of course, a more equal world for everybody. And I think that's really aligned with our mission at Lendahand.
Yeah, it's number one.
Yeah, it's the number one SDG at the moment. So, so where do you think we're now with the SDGs, and what needs to change to reach those SDGs?
Yeah. So actually, when you look back 20 or 30 years, there was a lot more poverty in the world. So the people living below the poverty line has decreased quite dramatically. It came from a couple of billion to about 1 billion at the moment. So there's about 800 million people living below the poverty line. So we've come a long way. It's sort of stagnating a bit, and in some countries it's increasing. And for example, the second Sustainable Development Goal, it's food.
No hunger.
No hunger, right? So the amount of people undernourished from between 2015 and 2018 actually increased from about 160 to 190 million. And it has to do with wars and everything. But the Sustainable Development Goals are not always going in the right direction. And if you switch back to number one again, so the United Nations has actually the goal number one is, to be precise, to eradicate severe poverty, meaning nobody will live below the poverty line in 2030, right? So we have 10 years to go to reach that, and actually we're not on the way to tackle that. It's going down, but it's definitely not going to zero at the moment. And I think really impact investing can contribute to that a lot. So it's going well, but it should go faster.
Yeah, so you've been in impact, you've been handling this topic for a couple of years already. So what have you seen with impact investing, how the sector goes? What do we need then?
Yeah, so what we've seen in I guess in impact investing, so when I started Lendahand about 8 years ago, it was actually for me the first moment to understand what impact investing is. And I think the industry has professionalized a lot. For example, there's now the Global Impact Investment Network called the GIN. It's an industry association, and they create a lot of data on impact investing, on returns on impact investing, on how to measure impact. So from let's say an industry without data, with a lot of unknowns, impact investing has professionalized. There's industry data. There's a lot of academic research now. People are many companies are involved with impact. There's definitions, so that it has really changed. And as you probably are aware as well is that also the big banks and like ABN AMRO in the Netherlands, but also Barclays in the UK, they're all offering impact investment products now to their clients. The question is, how impactful are those products? To be honest, but it's becoming mainstream. When you hear on the radio, you hear the big banks advertising on impact. So it's becoming mainstream, and I think that's very good. But a lot needs to be done to get the sector to the next level.
So what has been your biggest challenge then in these 8 years that you worked and founded Lendahand then?
Yeah. So I think telling an impact story 8 years ago was different than it's now. So funding has always been a big problem. I'm not, I was a banker before, and I was an okay banker, but the bank account was not good enough to fund this business, right? So I had to find external funders, and we did a couple of crowdfunding rounds. We found a lot of individuals that did that, but that's been actually till today. It's been a challenge, right? So finding funding for this mission. While we are offering actually good returns, we're creating a lot of impact. Still, even also on the Seedrs campaign, it's not easy to fund a great business that's making great impact. So we're really fighting for that with the team, and that is a challenge today, and it was a bigger challenge when I started it. But I was very lucky in the Netherlands. We got a subsidy from the Dutch state. 8 years ago. It was quite a big one, and I had to put all my money in that to complement it, and it actually worked. So that was quite an easy start, but then getting individuals on board and funding it, that was hard. And I think another entrepreneurial, let's say, challenge, I think is creating a team with no money, right? So how do you get talent on board when there's not a lot of money on the bank to pay, right? And this is why, and it's still a bit the case. While at these days, Lendahand is sort of transitioning to market rates, and what you get is really passionate or driven team that choose, to work on this mission and are willing to cut on their salary for that. And that's actually how that challenge, how we sort of managed to get through that challenge.
Yeah, I definitely I can agree with that. I also quit a better in salary job and wanted to find a job with more meaningful impact, and I think I found that definitely with Lendahand. It's more fulfilling, of course, that you know what the impact that we can make with our team in for other countries.
Yeah, and
it's also the same for you, Thomas, more or less.
Yeah, and I think for me it was the same as Peter. So I also studied econometrics.
Yeah.
And they always say that I think 1 out of 3 becomes a millionaire. But I think I think because it's a lot of data and financial analysis that you learn about. But I felt similar to Peter that it's I think at the end of your career, it's more important to work on something that has some sort of meaning and has some sort of additional value than just like to look out for yourself and have a like corporate career and nice holidays, but maybe lacking the sort of the meaningful impact. So I definitely feel the same about that.
Yeah, and I guess there's also to give a bit of an insight, there's also sort of a personal challenge when founding a business, because in the first years it was a very bumpy ride, and it basically means that at that time I also got my first son and my second and my third, and it's really hard to combine that, and I think that's maybe even the biggest challenge in setting up a business, is that you're at the dining table with your kids, right? And that your wife is telling you, Peter, where are you with your head, right? And yeah, that's what an entrepreneur also goes through, and I found it very hard from a personal perspective, but now it's a lot better, to be honest. But that was challenging in the start.
I can imagine. And I think in the last year, so we've been building our platforms. Of course, we've been building also to really fight for a mission that I think. So we've been working on the no poverty mission, and we've been together with ethics. We've raised Energize Africa, and now we're starting even a third platform called Plus Plus, more on the agricultural sector. So can you also tell why we chose that route to start our agricultural platform?
Yeah, sure. So if you look in the continent Africa on a broader level, actually, don't pin me on the exact number, but I think about 84% of the jobs in Africa is created in the agricultural sector. So 84% of the people in Africa work in the agricultural sector, and only 3% of the funding is going into that sector. And obviously, it's a very fertile, very warm country. It's really, a good continent to create vegetables. So, for example, in Burkina Faso, about 60% of their potatoes is imported from the Netherlands and from Morocco, right? And that's kind of an odd situation. And we can reverse that, create a lot of job and prosperity by reversing that. And that's why, we've, together with Lendahand and 2 NGOs, are going to launch an agricultural platform that's really focusing on the higher risk, earlier stage agricultural companies.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. So we touched base on the journey, how you found Lendahand, how you see impact investing, the impact that we're trying to make. And Thomas, you have more, I think, day-to-day experience with the impact that we can make and with the partners that we have on our platforms. So can you first tell a bit about what is our policy? How do we pick the partners? How do they find us? And not only, what is the procedure in that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, I think when we first started, so it's also been a bit of a journey, because I think when we first started, we focused mostly on fighting poverty through the creation of jobs. And then, like Peter already mentioned, job creation is mostly SMEs, so in Dutch MKB sector, that grow a business and then need more people to work there. But obviously, because we're platform based in the Netherlands with a relatively small team, it's difficult to know what's happening in every single country. So we decided to do that with field partners. So we have many different financial institutions that we work with that then use our money to on-lend to the actual entrepreneurs in the countries. And I think from there on, I think we lost Peter for a little bit. But yeah, from there on, we started to look at different sectors. And one of the main ones is the off-grid solar sector. So mostly that started out with mostly villages in rural areas that have no grid, so no access to electricity, and companies that go there and sell basically a solar panel with 3 lights and a phone charger. And then I think from there, we've also started to look at commercial and industrial, which is basically solar rooftops for companies that already have used quite a lot of electricity, and then use or fully or partly solar energy to then basically replace the fossil fuel energy that they would normally use. So I think there are quite a few different industries. And I think the interesting thing is that it started out as job creation and fighting poverty.
Yeah.
But then in this way, because we are focused on entrepreneurs in different sectors, and a lot of these entrepreneurs are active in impact sectors, you're actually touching base on multiple SDGs. So I think also within the company, I think a lot of people are fighting poverty and have that as their main driver. At the same time, I think there are also people that are much more passionate about fighting climate change. And because we invest a lot in solar energy as well, there's a lot of room for improvement on, I think, multiple fronts.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We have impact on SDG 1, no poverty. We indirectly we also can contribute to SDG 7. I think that it's clean energy, and we also have, of course, a direct impact on SDG 8. That's decent work and economic growth. So we're touching multiple SDGs in that sense, and it's like you told us, it's been a more natural process within our platform that we are taking new sectors. We also have, of course, the story of Soko. That's another different sector. So how did that company found us, and why was it a fit for our platform?
Yeah, no, that's a good question actually, because I think. Because we have a couple of sectors, because it helps to be focused on sectors that you have more knowledge of. Because I guess the more knowledgeable you are, I'm not sure if the line dropped, but I guess the more knowledgeable you are, the more you know about the industry, the more companies you know of, and the easier it is to get in touch with those and to properly and more quickly understand the business. And I think in the beginning, Lendahand reached out to a lot of companies because we were a small company, and we had to go out there, do sales and business development, basically to find companies that would be interested to work with us. But then, like Peter already mentioned, now we've been on the market for quite a few years, and we actually have quite a few companies knowing about Lendahand and coming to us and asking for funding. And I think we do have certain sectors, but in general, if we believe that it's a good company, that they have a viable business and viable operations, and at the same time they're very impact focused, then we're obviously open to looking at that. And I think Soko is a good example. So what they do is they have in Kenya local artisans that make their jewelry, and then they sell that in different countries, mostly through e-commerce. So also in the Netherlands, actually, in a couple of stores, I think at the Bijenkorf, and online you're able to buy their jewelry. And I think, and what they're also trying to do is to make sure that these artisans have their own tools, that they're not only dependent on Soko, so that they're also able to use those skills and tools for potentially other suppliers of work. And what you see is that because they have quite a bit of work, that they are actually able to hire more people to help them out in the store. So I think that's a good example of something that has a very viable business product and has a clear impact in terms of job creation and trying to do that in a sociable way.
Yeah, it's a really cool company. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and do you have other interesting or surprising facts, what you've seen in the field? What stood out for you when working with the different partners?
Yeah, I think something that I guess I think especially before I've ever been on any of these trips to visit the companies, I didn't have a lot of expectations, but really stood out is that a lot of these startups or scale-ups, when you would go there, you would expect a relatively small company. And actually, when you get there, you realize that a lot of these companies are very professional in the way they run things and are able to scale up very quickly and find good employees. And I think we had a chat about this earlier, Lily, that you were saying if you're an entrepreneur, you're very passionate about what you're doing, and the team is passionate about that. So there's actually a lot of room for growth. And I think we've seen that a lot where some of these companies went from a few systems to maybe selling 1,000, 2,000 systems a month, which means that that's another 1,000 or 2,000 families that all of a sudden have access to electricity or other appliances.
Yeah. Nice. And Lily, you also went to Cameroon, right?
Yes, last year I had the pleasure to visit one of our partners, and I think that's what Thomas was referring to. I think that stood also really at me that of course, we also have an office job. We sit behind a computer. We see a lot of numbers and everything. And especially at marketing side, we really focus, of course, on the consumer side of things. But yeah, it's good to have a reminder that the people we work with are real people. And when we visit those countries, these are also entrepreneurs, really excited about their company and really want to grow. And that the money what goes through our platform is really invested in real people again. So and that's I think a big difference with other companies like Triodos fund. It's more anonymous, and here you can really see where your money goes. And for me that was really a nice touch of my trip to Cameroon.
Yeah, it was Upoa, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
impressive to see the families, sort of enjoying the solar home systems that they get. They're enjoying it, they're proud of it, and they're using it, and it's really transformative, I guess, in many of their lives. So it's an awesome investment.
Yeah, and not only I think so. Most people think, oh, it's really a basic transformation. Like, hey, there's light. But I think maybe you can tell more about that, Thomas. It's not only about getting a light. There are more possibilities, and there's a whole revolution, of course, going on in Africa with the solar revolution.
Yeah, no, I think that's I guess a common misconception, or something that a lot of people in the Netherlands or in Europe would do, is that I think if you want to be active in impact investing, obviously you do that because you want to make a difference or help people out. And I think historically, then often you directly think about the bottom of the pyramid and people that are living below the poverty line and don't have any electricity. But at the same time, it's not only about having 3 lights in your house. It's in general about economically being able to improve, and your level of your life, basically improving the life standards of many different people. And I think what you're seeing now is that as batteries get cheaper, as a lot of these systems and also TVs and fridges are becoming cheaper and more efficient, that these families go from just 3 lights and maybe a phone charger to being able to have a small fridge for your food, but also being able to have a TV at home. And I think we probably have had questions about this, like why are we financing TVs? Mm-hmm. But I think it's important to realize that in the end, we're all humans and we all have the same needs. And I think it's really important to realize that also in a rural area or in a small village, the village a lot of people would enjoy watching a game of soccer or would like to follow the news. And I think it's interesting that we're not only focusing on poverty, but also focusing on, in general, creating a higher life standard and being able to help these companies that then are helping a lot of these people to improve that.
Yeah, I think another example, Thomas, remember we went to Zambia, right? And our driver came late every day. Mm-hmm. And it actually was because he didn't have any electricity. So his phone died in the evening, and in the morning we would call him. He would, and his phone was off. He was not able to charge his phone. So basically, the fact that he did not have any electricity, made him not an effective worker as well. So he was a driver, right? So you need to be able to communicate, and this is, I guess, how transformative a simple solar system on his roof can be, because the first thing that you can do with the solar system is actually charge your phone and be connected to the world, right? And this is, a solar system of 10 or 20 euros can do that, which this guy, had a hard time of funding. So I really think there's so many examples of how these the access to electricity can really, add value to families. They can start businesses. They can, energize water pumps, and they feed their cows with it. They can, cool drinks and sell cold drinks and generate a business and put their kids to school from that. There's so many possibilities for them, and indeed you are right. When we shut down the systems because when they don't pay, the reason that they pay actually is just because they want to watch the television show at night, right? So it is a human. I wouldn't say it's a human right to watch television, but it's it's sort of. I understand that you want to relax at night and have that. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think we told already a lot of about our story, and I'm not seeing any questions. So does anyone has a question for Thomas or Peter? Otherwise, maybe we can wrap it up in a few minutes.
Nothing yet. You can also ask Lily questions if you want
to. Sure. You have a question for me?
What did you do before, Lily? And tell us your story a bit.
So I worked at multiple media agencies and in the marketing and media departments, advising companies like Unilever how to do their marketing campaigns. And 3 years ago, I also worked at Unilever itself. So it was a really big company, lots of course, brands that I helped with the digital marketing. But yeah, like I said, I think during that time, my own personal feelings was getting more and more like, hey, I work at such a huge company with all these budgets, big millions, and where does it go? In the end, it's only about selling more deodorants or selling more soup. Yeah. So that got to me, and maybe the same with you, especially since I got my kids. I have 2 kids. Then you think, in what kind of world do I want to raise my children? And it didn't feel good anymore to work at a company which has such different priorities. So that's why I thought I'm quitting my job and look for more impactful job. And then Koen, he found me. So really glad with that.
Yeah.
So I see we have a question. Mm-hmm. Most of the communities where you finance an intervention have a pre-existing way of life. How do you manage your intervention so that it preserves this way of life rather than recruiting new members to a broken industrial consumption society?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Shall I take this one?
You want to try to answer that, Thomas?
Yeah, no, I think it's a little bit difficult to answer. So we work with partners. So we finance the companies and not the end customers. So I wouldn't really say it's an intervention, because in the solar industry, they sell certain products, and right now there's quite a bit of competition. So a consumer really has a vote and can decide which system to buy and whether or not to buy certain systems. So I think it's important to realize that now the solar sector has quite a bit of competition. So that also makes sure that consumers have a choice and can decide, well, maybe not buying one, but decide if they want to have a cheap one or better quality or different companies. And I think on the other side of the microfinance, especially there, the companies are quite local. So if you look at, for example, in Zambia, we have Agora Microfinance, and I think almost everyone in the company is actually from Zambia. And they work in rural areas. They work with lenders groups. So they basically find a group of people to take out a loan, and then together they would pay back the full amount. So if one person wouldn't be able to pay back, then, for example, the neighbor or a family member would be able to step up and pay that amount until that person would have the money. So I think, especially those companies, a lot of people are from that country and they understand the cultural norms and cultural values. I think in terms of the solar energy, that really depends on the company. But in the end, what they're doing is they're selling a product, and there are quite a few different companies that are selling similar products. So then in the end, it's up to the consumer, I think, to decide whether or not they would want to buy that. And I think it's important to, like, I think especially from our side, one of the strengths of Lendahand is that we, if they're entrepreneurs or companies that have a good idea, then we would like to finance those and make sure that, because we believe that actually on the ground, you have a much better idea of what you need than us in the Netherlands telling people what they need. And I think the TVs is a good example. And that's why we're also trying not to control that too much, because the whole goal is that there's a certain need for products, that need is being fulfilled, and we're just helping to make sure they have the financing to actually grow those businesses.
Yeah. Yeah, so like you say, you want to teach the kid how to fish by himself instead of buying fish for them.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess it's up to them if they actually want fish or something else.
Yeah. So I hope that answers the question. I think that's no other question.
Yeah. Well, I think so. David Jennings said that he would be interested in getting involved. I'm not sure what the best way is to do that.
Yeah, you can go to our Seedrs page on www.seedrs.com/Lendahand, and there you find our pitch and how you can buy equity.
Yeah, there's definitely just you should be able to find us, David, on either email or phone, or if you're interested, just.
Oh yeah, both. Yeah, you can. If you want to become an investor at Lendahand, that's we're also really happy, of course, with that. You can create an account at lendahand.com, and then it's a pretty easy step. The same way as Seedrs, you have to be KYC'd, and then you can start making investments. And the big difference, I think, with other platforms is that you really can choose your which product you want to fund yourself. So you really have power over your own money, where it goes. If you're more interested in solar energy or helping creating jobs, you can look different. We have different countries like India, Zambia. So it's a different flavor for everybody. Okay, and with that, I think if there are no other questions, I want to thank you, Peter and Thomas, for joining today.
Thank you, Lily, for hosting us.
Oh, let me check. No, that's the same question.
Just, thanks.
Yeah, and
thanks, David.
Thank everybody for joining the webinar. And again, you can always re-watch the recording with using the same URL. Have a nice day for the rest, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.